I said a few minutes ago, are both enjoying Negronis, an interesting, somewhat old-fashioned cocktail. As I said, I wish I'd had one last week when Emily was making her lovely carbonara, but I didn't think about it. So since this isn't going to take all that long, if it all goes well, I thought I might start by showing you a couple of the pieces of equipment in our kitchen that we like and enjoy and use a lot, although we're not going to use any of them today. But let me show you a couple things. This first one is a little bit ungainly because of its size. It's a wok. This is a spun steel, heavy, restaurant-sized wok. It's the real deal. We've had it for years and years and years. When Michael and Rachel and Elizabeth were younger, stir fries that Lee made in this wok were among the most frequent things that we had. And today, Lee and I probably have a stir fry once a week. The range of things that you can cook in this, whether you want it to have protein or just be all veg, and the seasonings you can put in is really quite amazing. This is maybe the most versatile thing we have in the kitchen, except for our knives. So we absolutely love our wok. So I recommend you think about something like that. The second thing is a pressure cooker. They've come back into fashion. My mom had one. Most of the food I ate when I was a kid came out of a pressure cooker. This one is German, built like a tank. And for cooking some things quickly and efficiently, you can't beat this. One example is we like risotto. And if you make it in the traditional Italian way, it requires a fair amount of care and attention and about 20 minutes of cooking. And you don't want it to end up too wet or too dry. With this pressure cooker, once I get everything in and up to pressure, I can make an absolutely beautiful risotto in 7 minutes. And the results are exceedingly reliable. So this is a relatively new acquisition, but a lot of fun and very useful. Nice piece of equipment. Give you that. And then the third one is a setup for sous vide cooking. Sous vide is French for under vacuum. It's a method of cooking that was developed in France in the late 1970s and was and continues to be used extensively in restaurants. The original equipment was very expensive and large, but in the last few years has become available for cooking at home. We have 3 different size plastic containers. This is the smallest one. And then this ingenious control unit that clamps on the side, which has a heater and a circulating propeller and a thermostat and a timer and a control unit. And the idea is that you package your food up in a plastic wrap of some sort and seal it as maybe like a freezer bag. And you fill the container with water and you program a time and a temperature, and it holds the water at exactly that temperature for as long as you want. It lets you cook to just the temperature you want, not overcooked, not undercooked, and the results are really quite remarkable. Probably the most dramatic example of that is trying to cook a chicken breast. The cookbooks say you want to get it up to about 165 degrees so that it's safe, but that often produces something about like a hockey puck. If you cook a turkey breast or chicken breast sous vide in this device for a couple of hours, you can cook it at 135 degrees. It is moist, it is tender, it is delicious, it is a revelation. One thing you can't do with sous vide cooking is to brown things. So if you wanted to cook a piece of beef, for example, and get it to exactly 130 degrees medium rare, it would come out looking a little pale. And then the question is, how do you brown it? Well, you can put it in a frying pan, you can put it on your grill outside, but the way that's most fun is to brown it with a blowtorch. And so if you've always wanted to be a plumber, which isn't a bad idea, they make a lot more money than school teachers, this is a great way to brown something coming out of the sous vide machine. when I got interested in this about 3 years ago, and then Michael joined in, Lee said that it looked like our 8th grade science project, which is actually pretty accurate. It's very much like that. But it's a wonderful way to cook and to be confident that your results will be consistent. And so that's sort of neat. Anyway, so those are three pieces of show and tell. So for today, we have some nice salmon. Got that from Instacart from Giant, and I've already cut it into pieces. We got a little more than we wanted, so these pieces are roughly 1/3 of a pound each, and we'll have some left over. We have some rice, and this is black rice, which I like a lot. It is much more dramatic on your plate. It's also a bit more fun to eat. It's a bit chewier, sort of like wild rice. This came from China, and it needs to be cooked slightly longer than regular rice, but we eat a good deal of black rice. It isn't really black. It's really an exceedingly dark purple color, but it's quite snazzy on your plate. And then we have some green beans, and we will fix those. Lee is going to make a salad, and is going to make the salad dressing that we learned about in France 45 years ago, which we have never stopped using. It is wonderful. We've never gotten bored with it. And I'm going to make a very simple but very nice sauce to go on the fish. So timing is something to think about. The green beans and the rice will both hold in their cooking containers for a while after they're finished without deteriorating. But we want the fish to be, want to be able to serve the fish pretty quickly after it's finished. So I'm going to start the rice first. It'll probably take, I don't know, maybe 18 to 20 minutes. Once it's about halfway through, I'll put the fish in, and we'll talk a little bit about getting the fish cooked properly. And then after the fish has been in a little bit, we'll put the beans in. The idea being to get the beans and the rice finished first. They can linger while we get the salmon cooked. So let's talk a little bit about cooking fish. That was one of the reasons for cooking this meal was that we know, as I said, a lot of people who don't seem to want to cook fish for one reason or another, and I think that's sort of too bad. The big problem that I see, particularly in restaurants that cook fish, is that it's overcooked, and you don't want to let that happen. On the other hand, you don't want it to be undercooked. So the way I'm going to pay attention to this is that with my carefully washed fingers, I'm going to press the fish and pay attention to the rather rubbery feel that I get. And the way I'm going to decide whether the fish is cooked is I'm going to pull it out of the oven periodically as we go along and check to see when that rubbery feel disappears. I'm not going to stick a thermometer in and poke holes in it. Once you've done this a couple of times, you really don't need to. So my guess is that this fish, which is a little more than a ½ inch thick, will probably take in the range of 8 to 10 minutes to cook. And I'm going to pull it out at about 7 and start checking it. And that's sort of my method for making sure that it is adequately cooked but not overdone without having to use a thermometer. And that really does work quite nicely. So I have already put into the oven. I set the oven at 350, and I have put into the oven a griddle. It's magnesium. Came from Lee's grandmother. We've had it for years, but it's nice and heavy. And I'll put the fish on a hot griddle when we get started. So Lee is going to make the salad while we get the rice going. And then she will make the sauce vinaigrette for the salad, and I'm going to make sauce Paul Bocuse to go on the fish, a very simple but very nice sauce, and we will see if the timing works out. So I'm going to make a bit more rice than we really need for a meal for two. This is 2 cups of rice. I'm going to put 4 cups of water in. You cook the black rice in a bit of excess liquid, and we don't have a rice cooker. This is just a heavy saucepan, and I will turn it on full tilt, and when it boils, I will cover it and turn the heat down and start the timer. So Leah's gonna take over and show you how to do the salad.
Okay.
I'm gonna get my cocktail.
No, where'd mine go?
I don't know, where's yours? What? Wait. 6 miles away from. Here's yours, okay. Right on.
Okay, gotta have my cocktail.
All right.
Okay, this is going to be a fairly simple salad. I think I'm just going to use garlic chives, little tomatoes, and lettuce with a red wine vinaigrette. And I wouldn't always put garlic chives in, but I had to root out a patch of them in order to put some pepper plants in. And we're trying to eat the garlic chives before they go bad.
You can only do that if you don't let people put junk on your lawn, and we don't. So
We have already this week eaten the second harvest of dandelions.
Yep.
In a stir fry made in the wok. So I cut the garlic chives into little pieces. The garlic chives came with the house, and for a long while I didn't know what the white flowers I was getting at the end of the summer were. But I have learned. They are garlic chives, they are edible, they seed themselves, so we have many. The tomatoes, these are biggish cherry tomatoes, so I'll cut them in quarters. And it's very nice to have a sharp knife to do these things. Tomatoes are not nice to cut with dull knives. Okay, tomatoes are just about cut. I always cut them on the longitude lines. When Fred makes salads, they get cut on the equator. So, garlic chives and tomatoes going into the bowl. Next, we have butter lettuce. These days we have whatever Instacart is able to bring us. And here, this is the compost bin, because we are very careful to make compost with all the bits and pieces that are left. And I just end up tearing the lettuce into fairly small pieces so that it doesn't have to be cut while we're eating the salads, bite-sized pieces. Are you also having salad, Michael, or am I just making two? Two. We eat a lot of these salads several nights a week. They are generally very similar. We were cooking at a friend's house once, and the husband, when the salad was served after the meal, said that he was not a frog and he went to bed. But we generally eat our main courses first and then we eat the salads. May I have a baggie, please, for the last little bit of lettuce? And could someone put this in recycle?
Yep.
Thank you. So that's it for the salad part. Now I'll make the dressing. And because we have made this for so many years, we don't really measure anymore. But red wine vinegar directly out of the bottle. Now, I make it in a little ceramic dish because that will go in the dishwasher. Fred tends to make his in a bowl that has to be hand washed.
Uh-oh.
But
I'm sorry.
we have different ways of doing this. Then a squeeze of Dijon mustard. It is good to have a better brand, but this is Mustard Girl All-American Mustard, American Dijon, gluten-free.
I have jumped in here to turn the rice, which came up to a boil, down to the lowest temperature, and I'm setting a 10-minute timer.
Okay, now I'm going to put some garlic powder in. I'm going to put some ground black pepper. These are nice Penzeys spices. And we buy these things in bags and refill the jars because we use a whole lot. And a bit of salt, sometimes kosher salt, sometimes Morton, when it rains it pours salt. Then I mix this up with a fork, again, because the forks rather than the whisks go in the dishwasher. And then I usually taste it. And if I think the salt and vinegar and mustard are about right, then I put olive oil in. Whisking with the fork as I go. And when it looks about right, I take a piece of the lettuce and dip it in and eat it. And this one I think is good. So I'm going to set it by the salad. I have 2 forks for stirring, again, because forks go easily into the dishwasher.
I'm learning.
And I will put my materials away.
I need the Dijon mustard and the olive oil.
Okay, I will put this away, these away. Do you need the salt?
No.
Because it is good to get the things out of the way as we are working.
Okay. And now I'm going to make the sauce for the fish. This was invented by and named for Paul Bocuse, the great French chef who died just a couple of years ago in his mid-80s. He trained an entire generation of French chefs and wrote a bunch of cookbooks. He had a fancy restaurant in Lyon, France. And most of the stuff in his book is complicated, but this particular sauce is astonishing for both its simplicity and how good it is. So I'm using creme fraiche. You can use whole milk sour cream, although I think the creme fraiche is really worth chasing. You can usually find it in the delicatessen or in or near the delicatessen area at Giant. And if you can stand to go into whole paycheck, they always have it. So I'm going to take a couple of good size spoonsful here of creme fraiche. And I'm going to put in a good sized slug of Dijon mustard. How much you put in is sort of a matter of taste. I usually put in about 1 part of mustard to 3 parts of creme fraiche. And then the magic ingredient is you stir it up. And that's it. That's all you have to do. Doesn't require anything else. So here we go with sauce Paul Bocuse. And this is a wonderful sauce for fish. It's great for chicken. Probably not quite so good. If I wanted a mustard sauce on meat, I'd make a different sauce. but for, they say, fish and poultry, this is a knockout. So let me get just a little more here. Very simple, very quick. I will taste it. Yep, just right. And that's ready to go. We will put some chopped parsley on the fish. And I also have something else that I didn't put on the cooking list, but this is a sort of a special order item, but I really like it. This is dehydrated tomato that has been ground up into a very fine powder. And you have to order it through the internet. It's not something you find at Safeway. It's not terribly expensive, but it is not only very colorful, but it gives a very nice sprinkle of a different taste. And so we're going to put some of that on at the end. So we will put this aside for the moment. And how are we doing on time? We have about 4 minutes left before we put things into cook. I'm keeping an eye on the water for the beans. I often don't turn the water on in time and the beans are a little late, but I'll try and avoid that. All right. All right. So
what are you doing about plates?
we have I got two plates in the microwave, and as we get close to the end, I'm going to punch them for a couple of minutes so that they're nice and warm. If you go to the trouble of making a nice meal, I think it's a good idea to serve it on a warm plate or in a shallow bowl, as we're going to do today. And
usually we put the plates in the second oven, but we've broken the knob on the oven, so we only have one at the moment.
I'm getting out a little bit of butter here. Put that on the rice when it is coming along. And so I think we are marching along pretty well. Move the beans here.
Carefully trimmed beans.
Timing beans for doneness, I find, is a little bit tricky. Sometimes you get beans that look just gorgeous and they take 10 minutes to cook because they're so leathery. And other times you get beans that don't look like anything special, but they cook quickly and are just gorgeous. So beans, I think, are a little uncertain. But we eat a lot of green beans. We think they're really good. And so, all right, how are we doing here? We're coming up on a couple more minutes. Well, we started seeing hummingbirds on Sunday. They were in little fur coats, but we have a hummingbird feeder right outside our kitchen window that Michael hung from a high wire so that squirrels can't get at it. And we love to watch these little creatures. They are amazingly aggressive with each other, and their beaks are longer than you might think, and they're quite the little warriors. It's fun to watch them. So.
We also feed the other birds, and with this cold weather, we've been able to keep putting out suet for the woodpeckers, and we put out seeds for the other birds. And because the birds come for the seeds, the hawks come. There's a big pile of dove feathers under our seed feeder this morning.
Right. All right. That. We are getting close to the time to put the fish in. I had a paper towel here. Yeah, thank you. Okay. Our old hot gloves died after a few years, and Rachel gave us a nice set of grill gloves, which I use all the time to maneuver hot things around without getting burned. All right, another minute, and then we will be back in action here. Any questions I can answer? Oh, it's more spam phone calls. Any questions I can answer about what we're doing here? If you notice the time, we've probably been at this for about 17 minutes, maybe.
But it is true that we had prepped things ahead of time.
Yeah,
The rice was measured.
We turned
beans
the
were
oven
trimmed.
on, yeah. When back in the era of BC, before coronavirus, Lee was on the 6:05 bus every morning, Monday through Thursday, and often didn't get home until 7 at night. So having a meal that could be put together pretty quickly was really important for us. And this is one that we have either as you've seen it or in some variation quite often. All right, we're hitting 10 minutes on the rice. I'm pulling this super hot griddle out. I am putting a little bit of oil on it and maneuvering it around. And then I am putting the salmon on the griddle. And back it goes in the oven. And I will keep a very close eye on how long it takes. I'm going to set the timer for 7 minutes, and let's see how we do here. In a couple of minutes, we'll put the beans in. Again, the goal being to finish the black rice and the green beans before the fish is done, so the fish doesn't sit around.
And let me know when I should mix the salad.
Okay. Let me show you a tool that we often use a lot. This is a not terribly expensive, but very nicely designed spatula, specifically for picking up fish. It has a nice curve to the blade. Let's see if I can show you that. And it has a relatively thin, sharp edge, and it's just dandy for maneuvering under a piece of cooked fish and lifting it from the griddle without tearing it or making a mess out of it. Really like that implement. And so the fish that I find challenging to cook are the ones that are very thin, like a piece of sole, if you can afford it, or a piece of flounder, or a skate wing. And the reason they're tough is that because they're thin, they cook very quickly, and you have to be really careful about not overdoing them. But they also become fairly fragile. And so getting them off the pan and putting them onto a plate requires a fair amount of practice. We don't cook fish like that all that often. I sort of stick with something like the salmon or cod. We eat a lot of cod, which I think is a very nice balance in the world of whitefish, a very nice balance between quality and price. And so we enjoy that a lot. But I've sort of stayed away from the very thin fish. And I've never tried to cook a whole fish, even though if you look online at the famous chefs' cooking shows, a fair number of them will poach a whole fish or something. I've never tried that.
I cook whole fish when I go fishing. Most
Well.
of my fish are fairly small.
Right. Yes.
And I clean them and cook them whole, primarily white perch, occasionally spot. I do them in a frying pan with some oil, shake them in a bag with flour and Old Bay first.
All right, we've got 4 minutes left on the time here. I'm putting the beans in. We want to put the oil. Camera angle's a bit strange. This is not blood on the griddle, it's just water. but the reflection makes it look a little evil. It's not. And the beans, like the fish, I'm going to check them as we go along. I'm going to take one out and run it under some cold water and eat it. And again, I want to make sure that it's cooked appropriately, but not overcooked. That's fairly important. Let me try to cook vegetables once or twice in the sous vide, and it seemed like a little more work than was merited. So we're sort of using the method of a large volume of boiling water and do that. All right, so we're keeping an eye on the timer for the fish. It's got about 3 minutes to go before I start checking it. And what I'm going to be looking for when I check it is first, the flesh will become a little more opaque as the proteins coagulate. And if I press it with my fingers, I'm looking for the point at which it stops being rubbery. And it will probably take a little longer than the 7 minutes I gave it, but that's sort of the way that I think you do a good job cooking fish. You can also cook fish very nicely in the microwave. Lee and I took a tour of national parks in the West several years ago, and we were stuck in a rather second-class motel in a small town in Montana. The restaurants were mostly Burger King and so forth, but at the local store, we found some absolutely gorgeous steelhead trout fillets, and we put them in a plastic bag. We put them in the microwave for a couple of minutes, checked them, let them go another minute. They were spectacular, and so you certainly can do a good job cooking fish in a microwave. Again, if you're careful to check as you go along so you don't overdo it. All right.
You should say something about the bean pot.
The bean pot, yes. Not sure you can see this rectangular pot. We brought that back with a companion from France in 1975. It's called a boîte des asperges. It's an asparagus pot. And we don't usually cook our asparagus that way, but it's a remarkable container because of the volume that it holds. Given its rectangular shape, it doesn't take up a lot of space in the cupboard, but we now have 3 of these things and really like them. Use them all the time. And, all right, we're another minute and a quarter, and we'll check the fish. Oh, I do need the garlic powder. Where did you put that away?
Put it back.
Yeah, okay. And whoops. Salt. Got it. Okay, we're fine. All right. Let's see, can I have that other glove over there? No, here it is. All right, fine. All right, we're coming up on about 7 minutes on the fish. I don't expect it to be done, but I want to make a preliminary assessment of how much more it needs.
Fred, sorry, quick question. Did you salt the water for the green beans?
No, I forgot. I should
Oh, no,
have.
no. Yeah, I
No,
just didn't know.
yeah, you're absolutely right. I should have, and I forgot.
I never do.
I know, that's why. Yeah, I know, right? Anyway, but no, exactly. I completely forgot, and I should have. And we have become more and more sensitive about using too much salt. All right, here we go. So the fish is a little more opaque, but when I press it, it's still moderately rubbery. So as I suspected, it's got a ways to go. So I'm going to put this back in the oven, and I'm going to give it 90 seconds. Again, because I don't want to overdo it. And we'll see how it goes. And now I'm going to check a bean. Go over to the sink and do that. Whoop. On here. All right, the beans are done. So I'm going to turn this off and go drain the beans. I'll be back in a minute. All right, so I've drained the beans. I'm going to finish them by putting in a modest, modest slug of olive oil, and then a good-sized load of garlic powder, not garlic salt. I'll finish that in a minute after I check the fish again. So let's see how we're doing with the fish. Out we come. Not quite, but it's getting there. One more minute. And then I'm going to put a little bit of salt in the beans. Along with the olive oil and the garlic powder. I'm going to stir the beans up. Get that all mixed together. And the beans will sit comfortably until we're ready. And now I'm going to check the rice and see how that's coming along. Yeah, it's almost done.
I'm gonna mix the salad now so
Yeah.
that I'm not in the way while other things are being plated. So I give the dressing another stir, dump it in. And mix it with 2 forks.
All right, the fish needs another moment or so, and I'm going to drain the rice.
So I'm mixing the salad with 2 forks. And it's important to keep mixing until all the leaves are coated. I believe in French it's fatiguer la salade. And once it's mixed, I take my 2 plates.
Michael, could you punch the microwave? Rice is finished. Put a slug of butter in the rice. And you can perhaps see this intense purple color.
And I'll just hold the salads up. Salads are plated and are going to the table.
All right. Okay. Let's get those here. All right, so we have shallow bowls, and I'm going to put into each one a couple of generous spoonfuls of the nice black rice. Like that. use the fish spatula here. To put that on top of the rice. And then use the tongs to arrange some beans around the outside like that. Ooh. Whoop. All right. Now I'm going to sprinkle some of this wonderful. No, actually, I'm going to put the sauce Paul Bocuse on first. So here's our sauce Paul Bocuse, and it is going on like this. I'll put this at the table. Lee always wants more. There we go. And now I'm going to sprinkle this really nice tomato powder over the top, not too much, but enough you can see it, and you'll certainly taste it. Like that, and like that. And then a sprinkle of chopped parsley. And we're finished. All set for us or for Megan and Harry, who knows? Anyway, so we have this main course. We have Lee's lovely salad.
We have a very nice Yulumba Viennese.
Yeah, I want to put in a pitch. I want to put in a pitch for Ace Beverage, which is on New Mexico, right around the school, right around the corner from school. We put in an order on Wednesday and had a delivery in 45 minutes. And we live out at the upper tip of the district. Really quite amazing. It's a store that's been there a long time. They have a good selection. They have a great staff, and they have a very good delivery service. So this is it. So we have one other thing, and that's dessert, which I didn't put in. We have, when we have company, we typically, Lee makes an apricot flan that she's been making for years that we absolutely love. We absolutely love, but I think there's another dessert that everybody should have. It sort of captures all of the highlights of American cooking and our democratic ideals. It is inexpensive, it's readily available, everybody loves it, and everyone should have a stash of these in their freezer. And if you haven't figured it out, I'm talking about Klondike bars. You can't beat them. I grew up in Milwaukee and worked for the Ambrosia Chocolate Company, a commercial chocolate operation still in business. And we made the chocolate coating that goes on these things. You want to buy a block of chocolate from the Ambrosia Company, it's 50 pounds of chocolate. And if you want to get some chocolate chips, it's 25 pounds. And if you want chocolate coating, it's a tank truck full. Anyway, you ought to have some of these in your refrigerator or your freezer. Anyway, that's it. Lee and I are going to go eat dinner now. And we haven't used up the entire hour, but we haven't run over either. We got some leftovers, as we always do. And that's it. So thank you for joining us today. And keep in mind, though, the message Desmond sent out. Really important. All right. See you all later.
Thank you.
These are my Mother's Day flowers. These are from Hawaii.
Oh, wow.
And this fancy one is a clematis from the yard. And the candle was from a friend of Elizabeth's. It's a beeswax candle that we've been burning while we're home.
Cheers, kiddo. All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.